yes, I look good. Maintaining these rugged good looks is not as easy as you might think. Seriously. Thanks for joining me today on Pastor Bob's Coffee Break. Boy, do I have a lot of things to share today. I take the weekends off. I do this podcast Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. And after the whole weekend, I got all kinds of things to talk about. So buckle up, here we go. And here's the question for today. Dear Pastor Bob, I'm going through a lot of suffering right now. I've watched you react to your father's death, and it seems that you don't suffer much with it. How do you get past it? Wow, that's quite a question. And I'm sorry if I have the appearance that I don't suffer much with it, because I really do. What you don't see is what goes on in my life off camera, and it has been a little difficult. I have those times of deep mourning and those times where I kind of need to put things in perspective. And there are a few things that I use to get through. Not that I don't go through it, that I don't feel it, but I have a process. And it's a process I'd love to share with you today. The first thing that I always realize is that, well, Jesus suffered. So I'm in good company with him. And I shouldn't be surprised by it, because he told us that we should expect to suffer as well. That's not good news, is it? But here it is, John 16:33. And I'm going to be reading exclusively from the Amplified Bible today. Don't you love the Amplified Bible? It says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have perfect peace and confidence. Good place to start. In the world you have tribulation and trials and distress and frustration. Oh boy. Yeah. But be of good cheer. Take courage and be confident and certain and undoubted. What? For I have overcome the world, he says. I've deprived it of its power to harm you, and I've conquered it for you. He says, I've taken away its power and I've conquered it for you. So he said, you're going to feel these things, tribulations, trials, distress, frustration, sorrow, all of those things we go through. But take courage, be confident, certain, undaunted. Why? Because I have overcome the world. I've overcome the situation. I've deprived the world of its power over you in all of these situations, and I've conquered it for you. Now, Jesus didn't say that we wouldn't feel some things, but he gave us a perspective, and that's what's important here. You see, suffering isn't just following Jesus. It's an opportunity to grow closer to Jesus. And really, that is where our power comes from, because we don't have it. He does. It's a matter of finding my peace, my courage, my confidence, all of those things in him, because it's not going to be found around me. So I think in pain we become even more aware of that. We become even more aware of those times when we're powerless and lost and weak and confused and honestly exhausted. And when I begin to feel that way, I realize that I have a choice. Now, the emotions may continue, but I have a choice. I can wallow in those emotions and get caught up in them and let them sweep me away. Or I can allow Jesus to work all things together for my good. And it's a process, and it's something I have to think about. Romans 8:28 says, "We are assured and we know that God being a partner in their labor, all things work together and are fitting into a plan for good to and for those who love God and are called according to his design and purpose." Well, there are 5 things and 5 ways basically to change your perspective about suffering. And really, it is perspective. And when I begin to get these things down, I have a way through my emotions. It gives me an opportunity to not simply wallow in them, but there's an end in sight. There's a way through. The first one is read the Bible. that's that's our go-to with almost everything, but it is the go-to. Especially in times of trouble. We are so susceptible to believing lies. I can tell myself all kinds of lies about my suffering, and I can, with those lies, get totally carried away and swept into the magnitude of the emotion rather than the resolve. Easy to do. I need God's word. I need the truth. I need the instruction. I need the wisdom. And never more than when I'm in the middle of some suffering. I need to make sure that my mind is strong and the lies are kept out. Important. So that's the go-to number one. Number two, excuse me. Toy boat, toy boat, toy boat. I'm having a peach impediment today for some reason. But number 2, look for reasons to be thankful. What? Thankful, but these horrible things just happened to me. How can I be thankful? Our whole lives we ought to practice gratitude. Practice it. Practice an attitude of gratitude. Tell God out loud what you're thankful for, whether you're going through a bad day, a good day, whatever it is. If you foster that all the time, thankfulness will continue to soften your heart. It'll continue to give you perspective. That's what it does. So even in your sorrow, even in the difficult times, look for reasons to be thankful. And then number 3, release anxiety through prayer. Now, this is a tough one for us. Releasing our anxieties through prayer with God is something that we're not so sure about. It brings us peace. It helps us trust God more, but most of us are anxious by nature, and we're not so sure we should bring that into our prayer time with God, because I might just say a lot of things that aren't very nice. And it's okay. Philippians 4:6 says, "Do not fret or have any anxiety about anything, but in every circumstance," listen, every circumstance, "and in everything, by prayer and petition," in other words, definite requests, with thanksgiving. So we just talked about it, number 2. Continue to make your wants known before God. Do you see what's happening here? God is giving you full permission to share everything with him. Your worries, your anxieties that seem to be paralyzing you, all of your doubts, everything. Even your doubts, yes. Everything. Be honest with him. You can even say, "God, I don't like what you're doing to me right now." If that's how you feel. Is that theologically correct? Well, probably not, but that's how you feel. That's where you start. And you talk to him about it. Now, when you do that, when you take it to prayer, and after you get finished praying, then everything is better. The whole world opens up, the flowers bloom, the birds sing, the sun comes out. No. Will your situation get better? Probably not. Really? Yeah. But you get better. See, that's the point. By handing your broken heart over to God, you get better. He brings relief. Your perspective changes. So important. The number 4, look for the opportunities. And you have to be aware and look for them. 2 Corinthians 4:13. Yet we have the same spirit of faith as he who wrote, I have believed, and therefore I have spoken. We too believe, and therefore we speak. Now, I have totally lifted this verse out of its whole context, but it stands alone too in this principle. Looking for opportunities, believing it, speaking it because God said so. Looking for peace in my situation, looking for refreshment to my spirit, looking for healing in your marriage, looking for salvation in your home, looking for hope in your circumstances. You see, that's what it's all about. I believe what God said, and so I'm going to stand on that because it's truth. And then number 5, the last one, allow others to pray with and for you. A lot of times we have a tendency to simply want to, withdraw and be by ourselves. And we don't want to see anyone. And people act funny when we're going through suffering. If you've had a death, people don't know what to say to you. So help them. Let them know that you're available. Let them know that you're still you. Let them know that they don't have to rehearse anything or, whatever. I've noticed that when my father died, people had the same phrases for me. I'm sorry for your loss. People repeated that phrase many times. I appreciate it, and I think most of it was heartfelt, but it's the same thing. People don't know what to say. They don't know how to react. Prayer is a big deal. I appreciated all those that came to pray with me. There's power in prayer. Friends who love you enough to put their arms around you, pray for you, remind you of God's power during a difficult situation, priceless. So this is a priority that we really need for each other, and that is carrying each other's burdens. How do we do that? Believing with each other, praying with each other, weeping with each other, rejoicing with each other. That's what the body of Christ is all about. That's what we're for. Philippians 4:9 says, practice what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and model your way of living on it. And the God of peace, of untroubled, undisturbed well-being will be with you. In other words, practice makes perfect. Do we ever become perfect? Well, not quite, but we become perfecter. We would get better. And it says, practice what you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, he says, and model your way of living accordingly. And what happens? The God of peace, that God of untroubled, undisturbed well-being, will be with you. Now, does this mean that all of my circumstances turn out the way that I want them then? Not really. Does it mean you'll be happy with the outcome? Possibly not. But that's not the promise. God's peace will come. It may not happen right away. It may not be easy, but it will. You see, it's all about perspective. I want to close with that great theologian Albert Einstein. But he has a quote that my friend Nils gave me the other day that I think is so fitting. It says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's a biblical perspective. But you see, that's the way it is. So when you're going through a difficult time, this is the process. It's the one that I try to use, and it's the one that helps. And it's the foundation that we need to get through. Well, I hope that helps some of you that are going through difficult times and suffering. And I appreciate, again, you spending this time with me. I look forward to it every day. And we'll talk again tomorrow. Don't forget that you are blessed. So go and be a blessing.